I'm reading from the Handel's Messiah Family Advent Reader by Donna Payne and Fran Linzo. The chapter tonight is called Lovefeast, and it's from the fourth week in Advent, or day 3, Tuesday. Lovefeast. How beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Their sound is gone out into all lands, and their words unto the ends of the world, based on Romans chapter 10, verses 15 through 8 and 18. It was Christmas in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Putzes decorated the houses, and the Christmas stars had 26 points instead of 5. On Christmas Eve, people ate food in the church services and lit candles with red paper frills on them. It could have been the last Christmas, or the Christmas before, or any Christmas all the way back to Christmas Eve in 1741, when Count Nicholas of Zinzendorf of Germany visited America and helped his fellow Christians name their new village Bethlehem in honor of the baby Jesus. Zinzendorf was a nobleman who had allowed a small group of persecuted Christians from Moravia to settle on his estate in Germany. With Zinzendorf as their leader, these Christians, who came to be called Moravians, soon sent missionaries all over the world. Some of these were the colonists who settled in Bethlehem. They brought Christmas customs with them that are still part of Christmas in modern Bethlehem and in Moravian congregations everywhere. The Moravian star has many tips that point from its center out in every direction. It shines with lights from within as it hangs in the church at Christmas time. Many Moravians built a nativity scene in their homes. Beside the figures of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in the center of the putz, they often had added other things, such as farmhouses, castles, or sheep on a hillside. The Moravians say that their putzes represent the world centered about the wondrous manger. The highlights of a Moravian Christmas is Christmas Eve, Lovefeast, to mark God's love for mankind and Christians' love for one another. The love feasts are patterned after the practice of the first Christians who met to eat their meals together. At a Moravian love feast, worshipers sit in their pews or sing or listen to songs as men pass up and down the rows, handing out mugs of milky coffee. Women give each person a sweet bun from big baskets. When all have been served, all eat together with thanksgiving and reverence. The Christmas service ends with each person holding high a lighted red cuff beeswax candle in the darkened church. The candles remind everyone that Jesus is the light of the world. The flames encourage believers to let God's love burn in their hearts so that they might be Christ's faithful witnesses to a weary world. That spirit of love and missionary enthusiasm was typical of the early Moravian church. Moravians were among the first Protestants to send out missionaries. They sent them throughout the world at a time when travel was difficult, and they sent them to peoples neglected and considered unimportant by many other Christians. It all began with love that burned in the heart of a young teenage boy. Count Nicholas von Zinzendorf was born into wealth and privilege. His father died when he was a baby, and he was raised by his devout Christian grandmother. While a boy at boarding school in Halle, Germany, Zinzendorf and his friends formed a club they called the Order of the Mustard Seed. The boys knew they were members of nobility, that they would have money and power when they were grown. So they promised each other to use their influence to spread the gospel when they became men. Besides Zinzendorf, out of that little boys' club came a cardinal, a president, and an archbishop. Zinzendorf grew up to give refuge and leadership to Moravians who had almost been wiped out by religious persecution. In 1731, the grown-up Count Zinzendorf visited Denmark, where he met a slave from the West Indies who told him of the troubles of his people. Zinzendorf remembered his boyhood promise and returned home to Germany. There he found volunteers among the Moravians who went out as missionaries to live among the slaves of St. Thomas in the West Indies. Later, the Moravians sent others to preach the gospel of peace to Greenland, Africa, Tibet, Central America, Palestine, and Alaska. They ministered to slaves, refugees, and lepers with medicine, schools, and the glad tidings of good things, which is hope and salvation through Jesus Christ. Today, the great majority of Moravians live in those lands rather than Europe or the United States. At the heart, a Moravian Christmas is a mission-minded Christmas. The missions is at the heart of the Christmas story. Jesus came in love to save the world. His people go in love to tell this good news everywhere. The last words that Jesus spoke to his disciples were, "You will be my witnesses to the ends of the earth." And I want to add a footnote here. John Wesley was a minister in the state of Georgia. He was very dogmatic and not easy to work with, and he was actually kicked out of Georgia by the governor at the time. And on the ship on his way back to England were a bunch of Moravians. And this ship was tossed by the wind and the storm and the high waves. And John Wesley thought he was going to sink into the ocean and die that night. But the Moravians were singing hymn, and he thought, and he asked them, "Why are you singing? Aren't you scared?" They said, "No, man. If you're a Christian, we know where we're going. We're not afraid of death. God will save us." And he thought, I don't know the same God they know. And that put him on a quest. And eventually at Aldersgate, where his heart was strangely warm, I believe he was not only born again, but he was filled with the Holy Spirit, because it was immediately after that, his ministry just took a dramatic turn. And because of the preaching of John Wesley and the influence of the Moravians and this Zinzendorf, it probably prevented the equivalent of the French Revolution in Great Britain at the time. So, serve God, preach the good news to everyone, because the world certainly needs it. God bless.